back, everybody. With us on the phone is ufologist and researcher Nick Pope from the United Kingdom, and sharing with us some of his observations and wisdom associated with this most fascinating of topics, as the UFO phenomena is global and worldwide, and whether you're in Mexico or Brazil or the States or Europe, everybody has seen these things, and probably deep back in time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Bart has a question.
I had a question for you, Nick. When we were talking before, we were talking about all the evidence that's been gathered and whether or not the governments are really covering things up, or is it rather just an instance where they don't know, just like we don't know, what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't believe we've got a sort of crashed spaceship in a hangar situation. I think what we've got is a situation where these things are operating in our airspace. They're tracked on radar. They're seen by commercial airline pilots, by Air Force military pilots. But in a sense, there's this kind of feeling of disempowerment. These things are in our airspace. They display speeds and maneuvers that we can't match, but we don't know what they are. So it's not so much a cover-up because we've got spaceships in a hangar somewhere. I don't think we have. I think what it is a situation where these things are in our airspace. We don't know what they are. We don't really like to admit to that sort of situation because it's all too difficult to deal with.
That's what I was feeling, that back in the 40s when this, after, say, Roswell, and there was a mass display of technology that was above what we had in the 50s, that we didn't simply have a grasp on the bigness of what was going on. And that seems to have been toned down, maybe not if you're in Mexico City, but across much of the Western world, that they seem to be a little more subdued in their appearances. But I don't know. I just think the program is so big that nobody here's got a full grasp of it.
Now, I've got a question for Nick. I've seen photographs of the Nazi flying saucers, and I mean, what do you have to say about that? I mean, did the Nazis actually have that technology?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I've seen some very interesting photographs myself. Of course, these days we're in the YouTube generation. There's so much CGI. But here's the interesting thing. Nowadays, just about everyone carries a cell phone, and most cell phones these days have a kind of photographical video capability. So, you know, when I was running the British government's UFO project in the 90s, I got 200 or 300 reports each year, but the number of photos, videos I got was very, very small. Now, we're just at that critical point where, you know, in the next few months, in the next certainly 1 or 2 years, everyone that sees a UFO is actually going to have a photo of it or a video of it on their cell phone. So that is an incredibly interesting place for us to be.
Nick, I've got another question for you. As far as all the, quote, evidence that you have seen, including all the new evidence being gathered these days, what is the most compelling evidence you have seen? And two, do you believe that, I guess what I'm asking, what portion do you believe could possibly be actually extraterrestrial?
Well, I'll take your second question first. On the extraterrestrial issue, my view is that I think there's evidence but no hard proof. So, in other words, I think when you look at the testimony from commercial airline pilots, military personnel, police officers, when you look at UFOs tracked on radar, photographed, videoed, where that imagery can't be debunked, even by the government. And I've looked at television videos with Air Force specialists. That's interesting. None of it proves that we're dealing with extraterrestrials, but I think there is an interesting, there's a compelling case to be made to say, well, hey, you know, we can't say that these things are aliens, but there are speeds and maneuvers being demonstrated here which go significantly beyond anything we've got. go back to the first question on the most compelling piece of evidence, I would go back to the Rendlesham Forest incident, which you mentioned. I mean, this wasn't just lights in the sky, this was a landing. It was witnessed by military personnel, and of course, critically, in terms of physical evidence, we had indentations in the ground, a Geiger counter used to take radiation readings, and the Defence Intelligence staff here in the UK, the MOD Defence Intelligence staff said that those radiation readings taken at the landing site seemed significantly higher than background, and that's a direct quote from the MOD's case file.
Wow.
What about abductions? I mean, a lot of
that's what I'm
people
interested
claim
in.
to be
Why?
abductions. Do you have any direct experience along those lines? Not so much that you were abducted, but that you
Just
investigated that as well.
An insight to the purpose.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you can't run a UFO project without getting all sorts of other things, not just the UFO sightings, but crop circles, cattle mutilations, remote viewing, ghosts on military bases, and yes, we got alien abductions too. Yeah, very interesting. The science tends to suggest that you're dealing with people who genuinely believe that they've had these experiences. And I say that because, of course, there have been scientific experiments where abductees have demonstrated physiological kind of effects, such as increased heart rate and perspiration when recalling their experiences, that, and these are double-blind experiments, that a control group of non-abductees have not demonstrated. Now, none of this proves these people have been on a spaceship, but it does tend to bear out the fact that they believe they have been.
So, but what seems to be common in many of the abductions, or basically 2 points, is that they're shown something that will happen with Earth, the Earth's biosphere, and they appear to be very interested in genetic material. For what end? Hybridization? I mean, it seems like, well, this is... I mean, they're
Speculation.
it is speculation, but time and time and time and time again, it seems to be that those topics arise when you talk with those quote-unquote abductees.